Emma Culligan has just done what centuries of treasure hunters, explorers, and researchers could never achieve. She pinpointed the exact location of Oak Island's legendary $300 million treasure, not with guesswork, not with wild theories, but with hard evidence, precise geometry, and verifiable markers hidden in plain sight. Her breakthrough flips the entire Oak Island story on its head. Because if Emma is right, and every clue suggests she is, the real vault isn't where searchers have been digging for 200 years. It's somewhere far more deliberate and far more protected. So before we dive into the discovery that might rewrite Oak Island history forever, hit that like button and subscribe, because what comes next may be the closest anyone has ever come to revealing the island's ultimate secret. The morning Emma Culligan returned to Oak Island, the atmosphere changed. Not the usual fierce winds blowing off the Atlantic, but a heavy, eerie calm, like the island itself was holding its breath. She walked with a steady, razor-sharp focus that Rick Lagina noticed the moment she stepped out of the truck. There was something in her expression, a quiet certainty, like she wasn't here to search for anything. She was here to prove something. Rick had seen thousands of theories, countless experts, engineers, historians, but Emma didn't move like someone guessing. She moved like someone who already knew where the truth was buried. A thick dawn fog clung to the swamp, drifting in slow sheets that swallowed sound and made the island feel ancient. It coiled around Emma's boots as she approached the eye of the swamp. The mist curled behind her, almost as if the island was reluctant to reveal what she was about to uncover. Rick trailed her by a few steps, watching her flip through decades of survey maps. Maps he'd spent half his life analyzing. Maps the whole Oak Island legacy had been built upon. Yet Emma examined them like she was reading a language only recently rediscovered. She paused at faint markings and overlooked areas most researchers dismissed. And every time she stopped, Rick felt that same pressure in his chest, the one that told him they were close. For the first time in years, the island didn't feel stubborn or silent. It felt awake, like something buried deep beneath the mud and stone finally heard the right person arrive. The $300 million legend, the whispered vault. It didn't feel like a story anymore. It felt real, uncomfortably real. Emma knelt at the swamp's center, pressed her gloved hand into the wet ground, and nodded as if confirming a private answer. Then she called the team over. The moment her equipment chirped, everything changed. A faint distortion appeared beneath the eye of the swamp. Subtle, almost ghost-like, but unmistakably artificial. Rick frowned. He'd seen every kind of false signal imaginable. But this was different. Deeper, more defined. Emma adjusted the frequency, and the reading sharpened. The density underground didn't match natural swamp layers. It didn't match compacted sediment. It didn't match anything expected beneath a natural wetland. Instead, it showed the signature of a constructed chamber, soil pressed, engineered, and layered intentionally centuries ago. Rick's breath caught. Emma swept the sonar again. And that's when the screen displayed the shape that froze everyone in place. Straight edges, exact corners, a perfectly uniform void, the opposite of anything formed by erosion or nature. This was geometry, purpose, design. Emma whispered, "This isn't natural. Someone built this." No one spoke. No one even breathed loudly. Because after all the false leads and dead ends, this was the cleanest, most deliberate structure they'd ever seen. It wasn't a clue. It was a blueprint. Rick stepped closer, hands trembling. They weren't staring at an anomaly. They were looking at the outline of a vault. the kind of structure you build only to hide something priceless, dangerous, or historically explosive. Emma's eyes shone with certainty. This is the heart of the island, and she wasn't done. She pulled up old Templar schematics, diagrams of 14th century storage vaults, collapsible chambers, diversion tunnels. Then she layered the Oak Island scans on top. Everything matched: angles, dimensions, structure. Even the void size was nearly identical. She explained how Templar vaults were often buried beneath wet ground to preserve wood and discourage unwanted diggers. And suddenly, Rick remembered a strange old story from his father. Something about a hidden nest under the swamp. A half-joking tale he always assumed was folklore, until now. Emma switched to a medieval Templar route map. Historians claimed it had inaccuracies, including a missing marker near Nova Scotia. But when she aligned that missing symbol with her coordinates, everything snapped into perfect order. The tunnel system, the chamber placement, the swamp location. Centuries of confusion solved. Then she delivered the revelation that changed everything. This vault wasn't built just for gold. It was designed to safeguard documents, artifacts, maybe even knowledge that was meant to stay hidden unless someone cracked the code. Rick stared in stunned silence. If she was right, they weren't standing over a $300 million fortune. They were standing over a vault capable of rewriting North American history. For the first time in Rick Lagina's entire time on Oak Island, the treasure felt not like myth, but like measurable, tangible reality. Emma then spread a transparent overlay over the maps. This time the lines formed arcs and circles, astronomical, not architectural. She tapped the center, and the simulation shifted to show the sky as it appeared in 1347. Instantly, the swamp's coordinate aligned with a celestial axis pointing north. She rotated the star field, placing Polaris directly over the swamp's center. It wasn't random, it was intentional. She explained how the Templars encoded vaults using star positions. Anyone searching with modern constellations, anyone relying on present-day sky charts, would always be off by a few meters. Just far enough to collapse tunnels, hit dead ends, trigger flood systems, and miss every vital chamber. When she switched the sky back to its 1300s position, everything aligned perfectly. A triangular celestial blueprint pointed to one apex, Emma's exact spot. Rick didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The realization hit Rick like a tidal wave. In a single night, Emma had undone centuries of confusion, years of digging, countless theories, millions poured into dead ends, and the heartbreak of treasure hunter after treasure hunter. The swamp, the map, the vault, none of it had changed, but the understanding of it finally had. Before anyone had time to fully grasp what Emma had just revealed, the team headed straight for the swamp, the new coordinate marked in bold red. The very first probe slipped through the water's skin and sank into the mud. But the resistance felt different, almost deliberate, like the ground itself was bracing against intrusion. As the rod pushed deeper, fat bubbles surfaced in slow, pulsing bursts. The swamp wasn't behaving like mud. It was behaving like something sealed. Marty crouched low, eyes locked on the bubbling pattern. "This isn't swamp gas," he murmured. "This feels like pressure equalizing, like we just punctured a chamber that's been airtight for centuries." The bubbles weren't chaotic. They were timed, almost like breath escaping from a long-buried lung. Emma didn't flinch. She simply nodded, calm and deliberate. "This is exactly what I expected," she said. She explained that Templar engineers were masters of water pressure deception. They used layered wetlands to disguise entrances and preserve interior chambers. What they were seeing wasn't a warning. It was confirmation. As the gas cleared, a faint scent drifted upward. Rick caught it instantly. A smell he knew from museums and old dig sites. Not rot, not decay, but ancient preserved wood, the kind kept untouched for centuries in oxygen-starved conditions. His eyes met Marty's. The jolt was unmistakable. They weren't pushing through random swamp muck anymore. They were touching the builder's world. The deeper the probe went, the more pronounced the texture became. The soft sediment suddenly shifted to resistance. Hard layers, shaped layers, possibly clay-packed walls or the remains of a collapsed ceiling. Ripples moved across the swamp's surface, forming faint geometric waves. It was as if the swamp wasn't a natural environment at all, but a mask laid over architecture. Emma monitored the readings, her expression tightening into razor focus. Everything her star map alignment predicted was matching reality perfectly. Star geometry placed the vault. Hydraulic engineering hid it. Pressure seals protected it. And now all three were responding at the same time. She opened a new window on her tablet. Seismic disturbance records from the last set of deep tests. Normally these scans were a chaotic mess because Oak Island's geology was fractured beyond belief. But once she applied her corrected alignment, the data snapped into order. Not just a chamber. Something bigger. Something branching. Emma cleared the background noise layer by layer until a sloping structure emerged beneath the chamber. Rick's breath tightened. This wasn't a natural cavity. It was too straight, too consistent. Emma isolated the angle. The slope matched medieval Portuguese fort tunnels. Almost exactly. She explained that these angled tunnels were dual-purpose. Storage routes for treasure and escape corridors for whoever guarded it. Rick had spent decades being tricked by false signals, natural cracks, and water channels. But this had a resonance too smooth, too rhythmic, too engineered. He knew instantly. This was a tunnel. Emma traced it deeper. The tunnel didn't fizzle out like natural voids. It arced gently, following the exact celestial geometry laid out by the Polaris alignment. Then the part that made everyone go still. Around 40 feet beyond the primary chamber, the scan registered a second void, rectangular, precise, and with a return so stiff it wasn't timber or clay. Emma froze the image. The outline sharpened. A stone door, intact, unaffected by water. Rick felt a cold shiver slide down his spine. He'd dreamed about tunnels under Oak Island his entire life, but nothing had ever looked this real, this certain. This, he whispered, voice trembling, is the clearest tunnel we've ever seen. Marty didn't argue. He couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming. Emma stepped back, steady as ever. This system wasn't built just to hide treasure, she said. It was built to protect people, or let them escape if the vault was breached. A dual-purpose design so advanced, it almost never survives intact, especially after 700 years. Yet somehow, this one had. With the tunnel mapped and the alignment verified, Emma ordered a deeper seismic sweep along the precise channel. The readings sharpened, and then the screen lagged just for a heartbeat before stabilizing. An anomaly appeared at the far end of the chamber. Dense, jagged, metallic. Not smooth stone, not consistent timber. Something heavy, something layered, something massive. Emma zoomed in. The density map bled into deep reds and blacks, the signature of extremely high mass. The shapes overlapped like plates pressed into each other, or gold bars fused together under the weight of centuries. Marty leaned in. His eyes widened. He recognized the pattern from European hoards excavated in Spain, where gold ingots and sacred relics had melted or merged over time. Emma expanded the field and ran a mass calculation. The software whirred, processed, and finally displayed the number, just under £4,000. Rick blinked, stunned silent. 4,000 pounds of metallic material, inside an engineered chamber, aligned to the stars, preserved in a pressure-controlled swamp. Emma ran the calculation again. Same result. A mass that heavy could only be one of two things, a dense cluster of stacked artifacts or a hoard of gold. Either way, even a fraction of it easily hit the $300 million mark. And if the objects were ceremonial Templar artifacts, the value would be astronomical. This wasn't just treasure. This was intention. Rick stepped back, overwhelmed. Decades of effort, drilling, digging, mapping, cursing, hoping, had all brought him to this moment. The swamp, the place they had prodded, drained, doubted, and returned to endlessly, had been hiding the truth inches beyond reach. He remembered being young, standing on this island with his father, convinced the treasure held some kind of destiny. His father once told him, "The treasure isn't just hidden, it wants to be found by the right person." And watching Emma, calm, precise, aligning seismic data and star charts like she was unlocking a coded door, Rick realized something he had never allowed himself to consider. Maybe the island had been waiting for her. Every collapse, every false lead, every misdirection had pushed searchers away from the money pit and toward this exact moment. For the first time ever, Rick didn't feel the island resisting him. He felt it responding to her. Emma cross-referenced the mass data with the tunnel slope, refining her numbers. The data behaved for her like a mechanism finally receiving the correct key. Rick felt the weight of decades pressing hard on his shoulders. He steadied himself. His voice barely formed a whisper. "You might have just solved Oak Island." But Emma didn't look up. She was already overlaying 2 centuries of excavation theories. The money pit diagrams, the flood tunnel sketches, the legendary log platforms. She sliced them apart digitally, then dropped them onto the new swamp scans. And what emerged wasn't contradiction, it was correction. Generations believed the money pit was the heart of everything. But Emma pointed out flaw after flaw. Impossible engineering claims, inconsistent historical accounts, and the absurdity of building a priceless repository with a vertical entrance. The money pit wasn't a vault. It wasn't designed to hold treasure. It was never meant to. It was a decoy, a master-crafted distraction, a trap engineered to collapse, flood, and mislead intruders, the exact strategy Templars were known for. The goal wasn't to hide the treasure underground. The goal was to drag everyone's attention away from where it actually was, beneath the swamp, inside the hidden chamber. And suddenly, even the infamous flood tunnels made perfect sense. They weren't random. They weren't natural. They weren't mistakes. They were alarms. Hydraulic traps had been engineered to activate when pressure shifted near the money pit, ensuring anyone who tried digging there would drown long before reaching the true vault. Marty exhaled sharply as the realization snapped into place. Every engineering trick, every collapse, every maddening setback, they weren't failures. They were deliberate protections, designed by a culture famous for hiding secrets behind layers of intentional confusion. The island wasn't a chaotic puzzle, it was a strategy, a brilliantly orchestrated one. Emma highlighted how even the earliest searchers in the 1700s had unknowingly triggered the island's defense system by digging in the wrong location. From that moment on, every subsequent explorer followed the same flawed assumption that the pit was the heart of everything. But now, with celestial geometry, seismic mapping, and structural decoding laid bare, the truth looked almost painfully obvious. The vault had never been beneath the pit. It was always meant to be reached sideways, through the star-aligned swamp chamber, down the sloped tunnel, and into the stone door vault, where the metallic mass waited untouched. The map transformed before them, no longer a chaos of conflicting theories, but a single, coherent design. A deliberate sequence of alignment, misdirection, and preservation engineered by people who anticipated intruders centuries ahead of time. The chamber, the tunnel, the stone door, the metallic hoard. They weren't fragments of unrelated clues. They were the result of a unified architectural plan, executed with precision and hidden with intent. The island's story shifted in an instant. It was no longer a landscape of confusion and speculation. It was the execution of a grand strategy, one that Emma Culligan had just decoded piece by piece. Satisfied that the digital model aligned perfectly with the ground scans, Emma led the team toward the swamp, her eyes searching for anything that might confirm the map in reality. As they moved, a thin layer of muck peeled away under her glove, revealing a sharply carved stone triangle. Its edges were unnaturally perfect, its symmetry too precise to be accidental. Rick nearly dropped to his knees. The shape was unmistakable. The same geometric language as Nolan's cross, the same mathematical vocabulary carved into Oak Island's very bones. Only this triangle was pointed like an arrow aimed directly at the anomaly Emma had detected. Marty traced the angle with a laser level, and the beam shot across the swamp toward the exact coordinates Emma had calculated. The alignment matched the 1347 celestial path, where the North Star sat during the final years of the Templar dispersal. They didn't hold their breath because it was a coincidence, but because it wasn't. The geometry, the star path, the Templar-era precision, it all fit together with a clarity that felt almost scripted. Rick murmured that this was the marker every previous search team had walked over without realizing its significance. Now uncovered and undeniable, it completed the connection between map, ground, and vault, a physical confirmation of everything Emma had decoded. As Emma ran the final equations, the data stabilized into a single, overwhelming truth. The mass readings matched high-density, non-ferrous metal. The shapes showed stacked rectangular clusters. The resonance values were identical to tested gold bullion signatures. The vault's stone lining appeared intact. Nothing shifted, nothing collapsed, nothing leaked. It was sealed exactly as it had been built. Emma Culligan had finally illuminated the spot where the story might end, or where the greatest chapter is about to begin.